Good evening and welcome to the Burnsville Planning Commission for Wednesday, November 14th, 2018. Before I start, I'd like to congratulate one of our commissioners, Commissioner Workman, Council Member-elect Workman, on his election to City Council. We will vastly miss our time with you here on the council, but we know you'll be fighting for, building materials and stuff like that. We'll be happy to work with you on that in your new role. So thank you for choosing to run and serve. I know that was a big time commitment, so.
Thank you.
We'll have plenty of time to talk about that in the future. But before we begin, I also want to, we've had some changes to two items on the agenda. So I'm going to ask the audience, we'll probably move, is there anybody here for the item 4, which is the parking lot expansion at 1901 West 143rd Street? Okay, seeing none. Is there anybody, and then I'm assuming for the concerts and related events at Buck Hill. Is that the bulk of the people? So we're going to, as I said, there's been some changes to those items. So we're going to move item 5 to number 3. So we'll move the Buck Hill one first, and then take care of number 4, and then move to the number 3, which is the comp plan amendment, or the comp plan presentation and approval. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve that agenda as amended?
I move the change to the agenda as you presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2 is approval of the minutes of the October 22nd Planning Commission meeting. Any changes that commissioners or staff had to the minutes?
No changes from staff.
No changes from commissioners, and I will abstain on that since I was not at that meeting. Is there a motion?
I move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we are moving on then to item 5 on our agenda, which is a public hearing of Buck Hill Incorporated for a planned unit development amendment to allow temporary outdoor concerts and related events held outside, excuse me, of a permanent amphitheater located at 15400 Buck Hill Road. Ms. Garros.
Thank you, commissioners, and for the folks that are attending this evening. Buck Hill has requested that the public hearing tonight be continued to allow them an opportunity to have a neighborhood meeting. There has been a neighborhood meeting that's scheduled for the night of November 20th, 2018. It will be here in City Hall, start from 6 to 7, and it will be downstairs in the community room. And then with that, because they wanted to have the neighborhood meeting, the Planning Commission can go ahead, because we have folks that are here tonight, and open the public hearing and take comments and testimony, but there will not be a staff presentation this evening.
Okay, so we open the public hearing, take comments. Do we close the public hearing?
No,
then?
you would just
We
continue it
public
to the
hearing.
next Planning Commission meeting, which would be November 26th.
Okay, and then there would be a presentation at that
Yes.
time with the details of that.
Yes,
So
that's correct.
that makes sense to folks. I'm going to open the public hearing, and those who would like to comment on this, again, you will have an opportunity. We will not close this public hearing. We'll continue it to the next meeting, at which point there will be more of a detailed presentation, and that would actually be the point at which we act. But because this was noticed, the public notice was issued, we're going to open the public hearing now at 6:34 p.m. If there's anybody who would like to comment, you can come up and provide your name and address for the record. And we'll hear your commentary. Welcome.
Hi, Tom and Patty Burns. We live at 1101 Circle High Drive, which is about a half a mile away from Buck Hill. It's over the hill. As you can tell, I'm over the hill. Close to County Road 5. And last year, the Wednesday concert was way too loud at our house. Thursday and I think maybe it was the Tuesday. The first concert was way too loud. Then they had two that I think didn't go off as scheduled because of the weather. And then the last concert was not way too loud. And so we're concerned about moving forward with giving them multiple concerts. And if they do go ahead with concerts, we'd like to see what the regulations would be, how they're regulated, sound-wise and time-wise, and how to enforce those regulations. If there's any thought given to a process where we can call somebody and say, hey, it's too loud. And what would happen if that was the case? Like I say, the one that was either Friday or Saturday was not too loud. It would be what you would expect at our house if there was a concert at Buck Hill. When you went outside, you could hear it over the hill. The first one was so loud that when we were sitting in our living room, it was like somebody had parked a car with like the boombox speakers going in our front yard. I mean, it was air conditioning season, windows were closed, TV was on, it was still loud.
Okay,
So I guess that's our
That's-
concern.
okay.
And so we'd like to see something like that, somehow it laid out in whatever
Yep.
the presentation is. Is that kind of how you do things? We don't know how this process works.
Yeah, so the way it will work is the applicant provides a formal application, and if I remember from last time, there was sound studies and that sort of thing.
I believe
but,
so, yes.
That's all, so we'll get presented that application and then obviously continue the public hearing too, so you'll be able to hear it at that
And
point.
I did see the sound study, and that's all well and good, but then there's the sound reality.
Actually at the
Yeah,
event.
and it would be nice if somehow in the, whatever is put together, that there's some way to address, hey, you said it wasn't gonna be this loud, and it is this loud. So,
Well, and that's part of why it's required that they come every year, or is at this point too, because last year was kind of
yeah.
an experiment, so to speak, so your
And that's how
feedback
it's
is very
gonna be
important.
That's how it'll be moving forward. They'll have to reapply every year. This isn't like a permanent thing this year.
That's the way it is, that's the way this year's, the previous year's was. I think that's to be determined at this
Okay.
stage, but,
All right. Well,
Okay.
we'll see you in, a couple weeks?
Yep, yes.
Okay, thanks.
And
Thank
that, yes, the next planning commission meeting would be November 26th, again, starting right here at 6:30.
Okay, thank you.
is there anyone else who would like to speak on this topic? Hello? If you could provide your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Rhonda Bernard. This is my husband Wayne, and we live at 15287 Stonewood Court, and that is also located at the top of the hill of Buck Hill. And we've been kind of involved in this whole process as it's been going through with last year's neighborhood meeting and council meetings and planning commission. And so I just wanted to return again tonight, as we're not able to come to the November 26th meeting. But there's a couple things that I wanted to see if we couldn't take a look at. Last year, there was a lot of concern about the noise and meeting the threshold for the PCA and for the city levels. And I know a number of us were using some apps and just by sitting in our house too, listening to how loud the concert was. And I would say, just like that gentleman said, you know, the first couple nights, it was very, very loud, and definitely was outside of the, you know, any type of noise level. So that is a huge concern for us. And then also, the new application states that they'd like to extend the hours of operation and also increase the number of concerts to 10. And I think last year was maybe six or
Six, I
six. So I'm curious because I'd like to know, extend the hours of operation, is that past 10? Because a couple times this year, they went past 10. I think the concert, they said stop at 10, but then the encore for a couple folks ran over, you know, well over 10. So I'd like to kind of actually maybe think about backtracking it to allow for that additional music play, so we don't get into, and those concerts were during the week. So I have to think about other families that have children, people that have to go to work in the morning, and that to hear that type of music well after 10 is, I think, really a disservice to the residents of Burnsville, and especially those that live over by Buck Hill. Also, increasing the number of concerts to 10, I'd like to know, is that, every Friday, or is that, 5 weekends in a row? I don't think that as residents, we should be subject to every weekend having a concert in our backyards if we want to have, our own family gatherings or graduation parties or what have you. So I'd like to see that staggered out if that is what's decided. And then also to notify the residents of, the neighboring residents when these concerts are, other than finding them online or that. And then long range, looking at capping the number of concerts to, whatever it is, if it goes to 10, so that we don't become, April to November, concert venue. And I think there are other places in Burnsville that do have concerts as well. So as we're going through this planning process, I really hope that you would take those things into consideration and look at it from the residents' view, and also do some actual looking into the PCA and city requirements. That is all I have to say, and I think my husband has something to say as well.
So the only comment I want to make is what we did is some of the neighborhoods, we just went on our iPhones and downloaded a simple, basically a free dB app. It just measures decibels. How accurately they are, I have no idea. But in reading the pollution control, it has a certain limit for up until 10 o'clock, and then it drops at 10 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And if the app is even close to accurate, they were at least 10 to 20 decibels over the maximum level allowed. So it isn't, again, I don't know how accurate they are, but I doubt that they're that far off. And they did the noise studies, but who knows, how it actually works in the environment. Yeah. I would suggest that part of their responsibility would be to actually get the people that did the noise and actually measure it at the concerts and find out just what it is. That way it's not us saying it was too loud, it's actually data saying it was too loud. Because what we did is we measured it up until 10, and then obviously it went after that. And again, I don't know, it's hard to say how accurately they are, but it was pretty significant. So that was the only point I wanted to make, is just where that data, where it came from, so.
Okay. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Are there others who want to comment on this? Ma'am, welcome.
Hi, my name is Allison Gipp. I live at 15333 Greenhaven Lane, number 111, and that's the group of townhomes that are directly behind, I call it the Bunny Hill of Buck Hill. I am fully aware as a neighbor of Buck Hill that, I signed up when I bought my house to have the snowmaking 24/7 this time of year, and the grooming plows at, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. When I bought my house, I did not expect the concerts. And while I've enjoyed being a neighbor of Buck Hill for 13 years, it was a really hard week for those of us that live there. I read actually on Buck Hill's own website, I got kind of that night of the first concert, it was pretty loud, so I did a little research, and it appeared as if the conditions of the city for the permit they had were that the music be done at 9:30, and the 3 nights that they were able to hold concerts, the first night was 10:10 p.m., the second was 9:46, and the third was 9:52, and it's like, oh, just a few minutes, but for my neighbor next door who gets up at 5 a.m., a half an hour can be a big deal for her as far as sleep and children, things like that. And the second was the noise level. When I was in my home with the windows closed, I could hear the words to music. My windows were vibrating. The first night, which was by far the loudest, I had my TV up at volume 73. And that was just, it was difficult. I don't feel like I should have to know what the set list of a concert is through my windows. And then the fourth concert I had was that it was scheduled to be 4 nights in a row. Luckily, one of the nights was canceled because of weather, but it's fine, if every once in a while we as neighbors can make plans, like I can go see a movie or I can make plans with friends, but 4 nights in a row, it's impossible for it's impossible for us to be gone from our homes for 4 nights in a row. So I just have concerns about it continuing forward, especially because it seems as though several conditions of the first permit were not followed. And so if this does continue, we would just want to make sure, like the other neighbors said, that there are ways to make sure things are regulated and go from there. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on this issue? All right, so do I need a motion to continue, or do we just continue? I can't recall.
I believe that you just make a motion to continue when,
We have a motion to continue the hearing. Anyone?
I'll make a motion to continue the hearing until November 26th.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Okay, quick
Commissioner
question.
Workman?
I just wanted to ask one quick question because Mr. and Mrs. Bernard will not be at the meeting. Did we have staff at the concert the night of, with sound equipment?
that I don't know. I believe that there was. I know that our other planner, Regina, did go out and did the same thing with some app, to measure. But as far as other folks, I don't know. We'd have to, I can ask that question and have her address that at the next meeting.
I remember her saying she was there that evening, and I don't know if she had professional sound equipment or an app, so.
Yeah, I
just
think it
wanted-
was an app,
Okay,
I believe.
that's all I have, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner
So are we
Roberts.
as commissioners gonna have access to some sort of information in regards to the data that was taken for those concerts or things like that? Or is it something we're doing on our own?
I don't know. I'm not
Okay.
the planner working on this, so I can, if there are things that you're interested in, I can report back, and Ms. Dean can address those at
I can
at
get
the
one with
meeting.
Regina too, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I would assume most of this will come out at our next meeting as well, right? Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor of continuing the hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we will see you in 2 weeks on that topic. And then we're going to go to number 4, the public hearing for EFH Company on an application for a planned unit development for a parking lot expansion located at 1901 West 143rd Street. Ms. Garros.
For this application, the applicant has withdrawn the application. They've taken a look, and initially it was published as a planned unit development, but really all that's involved are some variances to setbacks. So they've withdrawn the application, resubmitted the variance application, and that will be brought back to you as a new application, I believe also at your next meeting.
Okay.
There's no other,
No
no
action
additional
required.
action required from Planning Commission.
All right, well, then that takes us to number 3, which is the public hearing for the City of Burnsville to consider approval of the final draft 2040 Comprehensive Plan update for submittal to the Metropolitan Council. Ms. Garros.
Thank you, commissioners and folks that are here this evening. We have kind of a dual part presentation. We have our consultant from Hoisington Kogler Group here, Laura Chamberlain, and she will be discussing the aspects related to the agency review comments that were received and how they've been incorporated, and any questions that may come up related to that. Let's start out here. And this is actually the second public hearing. There was a public hearing held last year by the Planning Commission and City Council on the preliminary draft, if you will. And then what is required is that there is a 6-month review period where all agencies, adjacent jurisdictions, and a number of different groups have to review everybody's comprehensive plan. The City of Burnsville, we've been reviewing all of the other city comprehensive plans and county plans, et cetera, and providing comments. So the approvals that were given last year in December were basically to approve a draft to be able to send out for agency comment and review. In terms of just some background, because some of our commissioners are newer, this process has been going on for about 2.5 years already, so it's a long process. Basically, what is a comprehensive plan? Just in short, it's a document that's used to plan out or show what the community anticipates are objectives they would like to accomplish during a specific time period. In this one, we are looking at a time period basically from now through the year 2040, so the next 22 years, roughly. The ends and outcomes that are referred to in the plan, these are something that the City Council has adopted and worked with for many, many years. It's a way that they keep track of certain activities and events. There is a monthly monitoring report that's presented by the various departments on different outcomes, if you will. Those are measurables. And then an annual update to the entire monitoring report, and that also coincides with preparation of the budget. So all of these things are kind of intertwined. This time, we actually incorporated the ends and outcomes statements into the relevant areas of the comprehensive plan. So everything really is tied together in all of the city departments, and everyone will be working kind of with the same set of ground rules and objectives, if you will. And then it sets out policies and directions that are carried out through ordinance adoptions like the zoning ordinance. The comprehensive plan is also more than just a plan of what we would like to see in the future. It actually is a legal foundation under which we are able to establish and adopt zoning ordinances, subdivision ordinances, and other controls. So when we talk about something is consistent with the comprehensive plan, the reason that those referrals go back is because our overriding authority is the comprehensive plan. It provides guidance, especially for the Planning Commission and City Council on decision-making, and its components just generally include land use, economic development, housing, neighborhoods, the environment, transportation, public utilities, parks and open space, and then there's always an implementation program that's part of it. This comprehensive plan update is the fifth one that Burnsville has done. Burnsville, unlike a lot of other communities, really started out with long-range planning, and it was not actually required until the 1976 Land Planning Act. So Burnsville adopted its first plan in 1965, shortly after the city was incorporated, and then it's been amended periodically to this point. The Land Planning Act is the Minnesota law that requires local comprehensive plans to be updated. They're usually done every 10 years following the census. And at that point in time, the Metropolitan Council, that is the regional government, will adopt a metropolitan-wide plan, a series of policy plans, and then they let the individual communities, counties, et cetera, know what they need to adopt in their local plans to be consistent with the Metropolitan Council regional plans. And for these, again, we're looking at goals and policies and objectives through the year 2040. The way that the Metropolitan Council does this is they send communities what's called a system statement, and that goes through specifically their overall regional plan, which is the Thrive MSP 2040 plan, and it outlines for each city what you need to update in your plan to be consistent with the overall regional plan. We received our system statement in 2015, and just on the right-hand side, that gives you an idea of the different elements that are typically addressed in the system statement. The system statement includes a lot more than just demographics, but basically for the city of Burnsville, a lot of what we do the planning for is based on estimates that are prepared by the Metropolitan Council and then agreed to by local communities. And for population, for example, we anticipate that population will raise from about 63,500 to 68,500 by 2040. We anticipate an increase of households from 25,900 to 27,600. And the biggest one is an increase in employment from 36,700 jobs to almost 42,000 jobs. So there's a lot of things that need to be planned for, as you can understand, considering those types of growth projections. One of the other elements that we do need to address is affordable housing, and the Metropolitan Council provides information on that. And within the time frame up through 2040, Burnsville has a need for 266 more affordable units in various elements, and they're discussed in much more detail in the plan. For this round of updates, the Hoisington Kogler Group was the consultant that was chosen to lead the effort. And the comprehensive plan is really a document that is established and set up through the Planning Commission. You are the planning agency, if you will, for the city of Burnsville. So with Hoisington Kogler Group, we worked with other consultants to prepare other technical parts of the plan, including the transportation plan, sewer utilities, that type of thing. So the market analysis, the economic development plans, and performas, and then also sustainability and natural resources. And all of those things have been incorporated into the plan. But the lead agency for preparing the draft and for meeting with all of the various groups and the Planning Commission and the Advisory Commission was Hoisington Kogler, and they are really the principal that worked through this whole process. Public engagement was a large part of this comprehensive plan update, and the City Council wanted to make sure that we had a plan. There was an actual public engagement plan that was adopted, and we primarily utilized a volunteer advisory committee, which was set up of 22 individuals that came regularly to meetings, and they tried to represent a wide variety of folks, both age and gender, also the business community, also the Visitors Bureau representing people that come into the community, and just try to broaden as much as we could to get input back on the proposed plan. So there are a number of items that were here. In addition to those, information was provided in multiple languages, and we also had folks attend from both the consultant and staff, various events and forums, and kind of just talk to people just as they're coming to different things, giving them ideas, and also handing out information for them to provide feedback on the website, which is still up today and still taking public comments, although they're much slower today than they were initially coming in. The planning process and timeline that was put together by Hoisington was really a sheet like this. I don't expect you to read it, but it was a process that basically started back in May of 2016 and actually continues. At a total of 11 advisory committee meetings, the council, or excuse me, the staff and the in Hoisington met with all of the different city commissions, met with school district, Chamber of Commerce, all of these things. There were 4 neighborhood meetings that were held, one for Heart of the City area, one for the East Cliff Business Park area, one for the Minnesota River Quadrant, and then one for Southwest Burnsville. The top 3 areas were identified early on as focus areas for our comprehensive plan, areas that we see probably the most opportunity for redevelopment and development. And then Southwest Burnsville, that's been an area of the city that is within the city's urban service area, meaning we intend to provide utilities at some point, public utilities all throughout the city. But it's an area also where there are a lot of folks that are on individual wells and septic systems and have larger lots. And the city has kind of looked at that group because they are on the wells and septics with the larger lots as a kind of a separate almost land use category, and there are even different policies and things that the council has related to Southwest Burnsville. So they were included as well. We had 3 formal public open house meetings, and the council received updates periodically throughout the process. All of the meetings were open to the public, and also the majority of meetings were available and still are for web streaming off the city's website. The preliminary draft public hearing was in December of last year, and the council approved it for agency and jurisdiction review back on December 19th of last year, 2017. There's a typo in the planning report, but it was 2017. In the final plan, it's available on the city's website, and there is the information to get to the plan. There are 8 chapters this time, so it has been rearranged somewhat, but covering those general areas that I just discussed previously. As I said kind of in the beginning, there were 3 focus areas that we knew of that thought would be things to look at. The aging industrial area along Cliff Road, Minnesota River Quadrant, which is that big purple area, north of 13 and west of 35W, and then also heart of the city. Some of the things prompting heart of the city would be the Orange Line, bus rapid transit, and those were identified there. For the Minnesota River Quadrant, there are a couple of plans that are included in the land use plan, and one of them shows basically the land use plan, again, through up till 2040, with the current interchanges out there. And then another one with an additional interchange placed between Highway 13 and Black Dog Road. The next area was the heart of the city, and on the left is the plan. I can't remember now, how did we do that? It's part of the heart of the city design framework, that's what it is, manual. And then the right just gives you an aerial photo of heart of the city. And the plans for this area included a land use plan. And I think the major changes that you'll see in this is that more residential was incorporated in order to support businesses, and a look at the areas with the large circles are kind of transit-oriented development opportunities. So there is a lot more emphasis on residential in heart of the city than there has been in previous plans. And again, that's to support transit activities and commercial development. They also did a potential redevelopment plan of those areas. Kind of in the central part, you'll see that they're looking at residential with some different improvements kind of to help identify heart of the city area, and then also some additional mixed use options, and looking a little bit more focus area outside of the heart of the city 1, which is our major area around Nicollet and Burnsville Parkway, because most of that's redeveloped or going to be or is under a planned unit development agreement. And so this was a second plan that's part of the economic development plan. I also looked at the aging industrial area, and this is primarily the, it's called Lark Industrial Park, or the Cliff Road. It's north of Highway 13. And going into this, the city thought that this was kind of an area that needs some help, kind of run down, and maybe, a lot of open buildings, those types of things. We actually found out that it's a district that does not have a lot of vacancies. It's more of an incubator type district, an opportunity area where small businesses can start out and room to grow, and it's actually quite successful. And there is a plan as part of the economic development plan that talks about some potential improvements, a couple of things related to transportation and transit, but really just improving the appearance and streetscape, and some of those elements also talking about what types of land use should and shouldn't kind of be guided for the area. During the process, the Burnsville Center, County Road 42 area became a focus. And as the Planning Commission knows, there is a separate study that's underway and almost complete for Burnsville Center, County Road 42. When we did the comprehensive plan, we did note that majority of the area would change from just commercial to mixed use. And then when the other plan that's being worked through right now, should that be adopted, they're likely then that will be rolled into the comprehensive plan as well. One more. Let me see here. Whoops, I did not want to do that. There we go. There you go.
Thank you, Deb. Good evening, Commissioners. As Deb said, my name is Laura Chamberlain. I am a planner with Hoisington Kogler Group Incorporated, HKGI, and have been in this process 2.5 years. It's actually around the time I started with HKGI, so this is a fun project to see, having gone from the very beginning all the way now. Even though we're not quite done, the end is in sight, which is really exciting. So, as Deb mentioned, we have just finished up with our 6-month review, which is officially called the Adjacent and Affected Jurisdictional Review, which is required by the Metropolitan Council for this planning process within the Twin Cities region. And we had sent out the draft to our list of adjacent and affected jurisdictions in March of 2018 and wrapped that up September 2018. We received 12 responses. 5 of those gave a response of no comment or waived comment. Those are from the City of Bloomington, Credit River Township, City of Savage, Eagan Evergrove Heights Watershed Management Organization, and the Metropolitan Airports Commission. The remaining 7 did provide comments of varying levels. And just as a note, most of the comments that we received are very technical in nature, minor edits to, we're calling this trail something else, or things along those lines. And I will go broadly over each of the different jurisdictions' comments tonight, but if you have any further questions on what the details of that involved, they are included within an appendix in the draft, I believe, Appendix H, maybe? Not sure which letter. It's in there somewhere amongst the thousands of pages that you have in the document. So the different jurisdictions that submitted comments: City of Lakeville, Dakota County, Scott County, Lower Minnesota River Watershed District, the Minnesota Valley Transit Authority, MnDOT, and then the Three Rivers Park District. And just a note that the Scott County comments and the Three Rivers Park District comments were the same, as Three Rivers Park District works within Scott County for the comments that they had. So the City of Lakeville, most of their comments were related to minor changes in the maps within the plan, just a few areas. And many of their comments were supportive of, or just statements of support for Burnsville's policies in different areas that they felt helped what Lakeville is also looking for in their comprehensive plan. Dakota County had comments related to highway expansion projects that they have within their comprehensive plan that they wanted to be seen reflected within our text. Wanted some additional descriptions regarding the transit link service, and also to for within our facilities wastewater facilities section to talk about the septic system failure and what processes are in place at the City of Burnsville already in case those systems fail. As I mentioned, Scott County and Three Rivers Park District provided the same comments. They had a few name corrections of different destinations within the Parks District, and some minor regional trail map edits. The Lower Minnesota River Watershed District provided the city more, instead of comments that related specifically to the comprehensive plan, more policy recommendations that they recommend to be included in city ordinances. Our team did not do an analysis whether or not those were already within city ordinances, but they're often related to what would be in a shoreland ordinance or things along those lines regarding erosion control and other elements of stormwater moving into the watershed district system. MVTA asked for clarifying language about their services and other transit that connects with MVTA, excuse me, within Burnsville, and wanted or suggested some additional language regarding what the Metropolitan Council has designated different transit market areas, and to explore that a little bit further. So we took the language recommendation and included that within our transportation section. MnDOT had a few minor changes about the interchanges at 35W and Black Dog Road and Cliff Road. As Deb had mentioned before, around the MRQ, they wanted to add some clarifying language about what would happen if a new proposed interchange didn't happen, or something along those lines. And then they also provided a list of policy recommendations and resources regarding for future steps or future things that the city should consider regarding truck and freight routes, complete streets policy, and then general land use and planning, and how that impacts transportation. So in addition to the 6-month review, the City of Burnsville decided to also take advantage of the Metropolitan Council's preliminary review process. This is technically an unofficial review, but allowed Metropolitan Council review staff to look through our plan and identify any areas where the draft was incomplete or inconsistent with, or incomplete regarding requirements or inconsistent with policies. And if we could address them in this, then hopefully once we submit for our official review, they will say, okay, you are complete and you are consistent. So there were some minor adjustments based off of this review as well. And they follow a few different categories. Forecasts, there were some minor updates that are the forecast that Deb had provided that were within our system statement. We had some variation between what our forecasted sewer was going to be supplying versus some of our transportation. So we cleaned up all those tables so that they all forecast for the same population, households, and employment. Within the housing chapter, there was a need for an update of existing housing assessment. So because we had been in the process so long that by the time the Met Council saw it, our data was a bit outdated, and so they recommended we have newer data, please use this, and we decided it was an easy enough swap out, so we went with that. Newer data, probably always better. Within the housing section, there is a housing tool table to be used for housing implementation. A number of those items were adjusted slightly, clarified, some additional descriptions added, as well as some sequence of use descriptions. So that the way that we were describing them met the standards that the Met Council was looking for that section. And then a major part, and this kind of relates to our next bullet point, an update to the land use chapter to add phasing and to project how many acres of different land uses were likely to develop or redevelop by 2020, 2030, and 2040. Then those elements would then have an impact on how much housing was likely to be built during those different times. So those numbers were adjusted so that they correspond with the updates to the land use chapter. As I mentioned, the biggest change within the land use chapter is this update of showing the phasing of expected development and redevelopment. And the kind of more technical and calculating portions of that have been included as an appendix, but don't really change much of the policy related to land use, just more of how we think that things are going to redevelop. And then also to add measure of employment. For this instance, we use floor area ratio for all applicable employment land uses. So kind of just guess it, or to establish, we assume that industrial areas will develop at an FAR of X, and commercial areas specializing maybe in highway commercial will have an FAR of Y, etc. Other elements included sanitary sewer. There was a need to address some inflow and infiltration issues and policies that the Met Council has specifically identified in their set of requirements. And so we revisited that and made sure that we were including all the information that they were looking for. A new requirement of the Met Council of this round of comprehensive planning is solar access protection and development. They have provided a solar resources map, which kind of has some funky colors going, but it basically assesses how well areas could, if you put solar facilities on there, how much that they could collect. And so we added that map as well as the calculations and some policies. We aren't anticipating any solar farms in Burnsville. It's not really primed for that, but the city does have language encouraging individual solar systems for individual landowners. And then transportation. We had some minor clarifications for the future roadway needs, especially number of lanes and interchanges and any future roadway or right-of-way acquisitions that might be needed concerning those. Added some descriptive language about the city's role in the orange line as the existing process, as well as any future extension and planning. And some minor changes regarding regional airspace policies, and then descriptions of different areas that might generate freight traffic. And those typically are industrial areas, manufacturing. So are we ready for next? Okay. What comes next after this discussion tonight? I believe that this will be going before the city council's next meeting, consent? If this moves forward, excuse me. So the city council will review the draft that you're seeing tonight and hopefully approve to submit to the Metropolitan Council. Sometime before December 31st is when the city officially has to submit, but we have a little bit of wiggle room, which is great. So when the city submits to the Metropolitan Council for official review, the Met Council will sometime within the first quarter of, that should say 2019, not 2018, and return the comprehensive plan with their assessment of completion as well as consistency. If they say no changes are required, which is what we're hoping for, then the city council will then adopt the comprehensive plan. And if changes are required, then there will be additional steps, and depending the amount of changes that are required, we're anticipating, hopefully, not a lot, but there could be more need for communication between the city and the Met Council on how to achieve those compliance and consistency issues. And then finally, after this entire process, once the city council has adopted the comprehensive plan, within 9 months of adoption, official controls of the city, so this includes your zoning ordinance, zoning map, subdivision ordinances, anything that needs to be updated to reflect any changes of the new comprehensive plan need to be in place within 9 months after adoption. All right, that's all for me.
Thank you, Ms. Chamberlain. Ms. Garros, I think, has a
Yes.
sequel.
Just kind of wrap up here. In addition to the comments that Laura had discussed and that were in your packet, we did also receive a letter, and this was provided for you too, from All Parks Alliance for Change. And they were basically discussing different things that they thought should be incorporated into the housing chapter of the comp plan related to manufactured housing. So what we did is we did make those changes, the red line changes, and those pages from the housing plan were attached with your background report. And I won't go over them specifically unless you want to. The last item is that the Planning Commission has recently looked at, sorry about this, has recently looked at 3 applications for amendments to our 2030, our current comprehensive plan. And these have been submitted to the Metropolitan Council. We're not sure when the Metropolitan Council will act on them. But what we wanted to do is to include in the recommendation for approval that we have these active applications in various stages of review by Metropolitan Council, and we anticipate that the land use changes will be effective. But so we don't have to reopen public hearings again. One of the recommendations is that once these are approved, they can just be rolled into our 2040 comprehensive plan land use map. One of them is for Northland Real Estate. That's a property by Grace Church, looking to make a change from low-density residential to mixed use. Roush General Contracting, they are the group, I believe they were just in, and they're looking at ultimately putting up a car wash and I believe fast food over by County Road 5 and 11, just to the west of like IHOP in that area. And then there's also HL Burnsville Limited Partnership. This is a larger area that is south of the where Interstate 35E and 35W come together. South east of that contains a little over 31 acres. They're looking to go from a business land use to a mixed land use. And with that, the recommendation from staff is we're recommending approval of the final draft of the comprehensive plan, provided or subject to the 3 conditions. 1, that those 3 land use changes that I just reviewed would be incorporated at a future date once they're approved by the Metropolitan Council. Then to incorporate any changes which would be recommended by Planning Commission and ultimately directed by the City Council. And then 3, the plan would not be effective until Metropolitan Council gives their okay and approval, and then the City Council would hold another meeting and have to adopt a resolution to place the plan into effect. So with that, staff will stand for comments and then public hearing.
Just one question, or 2 questions, actually. So on item number 3 there, so after the Metropolitan Council approves this, it just goes directly to the City Council? It doesn't come back through our process?
That's correct.
Again, okay.
Yes.
And then the item 1 on the recommendations, does that mean we hold submission of this until those come back from the Metropolitan Council?
No, they are under review, so hopefully they will be approved sooner than later. The reason that we're including this is because this is a recommendation to adopt the 2040 plan with these changes, so that when the Metropolitan Council, or should they, if they don't approve it, then these things won't be incorporated onto that land use map. But if they do, which we anticipate they will, we'll just make the changes on our 2040 land use map, and they will not have to go through public hearings again because they've already just done that.
Okay. Commissioners, questions for Ms. Garros or Ms. Chamberlain?
I do.
Commissioner Henderson?
First of all, great document. I know this is a very time-consuming process, so it's a great document. But I just have just a few minor things, and just because I know how important the document is, I was kind of nitpicking it. So of page 30 in the comp plan itself, there's that pie chart, it's figure 1-5.
Okay.
The blues, there's a couple blues that look very similar to each other, at least on my screen, and I couldn't differentiate between the,
Want to differentiate
Right.
those colors.
let's see, because what was it for? The Hispanic or Latino with American, Indian, and Alaskan Native alone,
Okay.
or the two colors that were extremely similar. On page 36, let's see, figure 1-12, all the wording is extremely bunched
Okay.
for all those pie charts as well. Same with figure 1-25 on page 43. Underneath, all the wording is bunched together again. Let's see. On 162, again, this may be incredibly nitpicky, but the job codes listed on the right-hand side of the pie chart, there's only 6 that are listed, but there are more than 6 colors in the pie chart. And then also, still in that same pie chart, between the last 2 job codes, there needs to be some sort of spacing.
Okay.
And then the last one was on page 203, and that was figure 410. Again, the coloring.
Okay.
There were a couple blues that were pretty close.
Thank you. We'll make those changes.
Commissioners, anything else for Ms. Garros or Ms. Chamberlain?
So point of
Commissioner
clarification.
Workman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this needs to be submitted by the end of this year,
Yes.
and there's no review after that. It becomes tangible.
Correct. We've had all of the reviews going into this. If there's something major, a major change that the Metropolitan Council, for some reason thinks doesn't meet their overall regional plan, then for something like that, we may, have to bring that back for a public hearing, but we do not anticipate that at all because we've already submitted and gone through Metropolitan Council on their kind of voluntary preliminary review, so we have a good idea of what their changes will be. So at this point in time, what we anticipate is we will submit this to Metropolitan Council. They'll do further review. They may have some tweaks in some areas. That would be very common. And then they would tell the city that you can put the plan into effect subject to X, Y, Z types of changes. At that point in time, there is another public meeting with the city council, and we would identify with them what the specifics are that the Metropolitan Council wants, and then they would approve then a resolution, and then it would be effective.
Okay. And the only reason I ask is if there was another comp plan amendment between now and then that being finalized, would that slow down the process? But
I don't believe, if something were to come in now, it may have to wait until after our comprehensive plan is reviewed and approved by council.
okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Anything more? If not, we will open the public hearing at 7:28 p.m. Anyone wishing to comment can come to the podium and identify themselves and their address for the record. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing at 7:29 p.m. Commissioners, comments, motion, or what is your pleasure?
Make a motion on this.
Okay, Commissioner Timmerman.
All right, I'd like to move that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of this final comprehensive plan The final draft 2040 comprehensive plan for submittal to the Metropolitan Council, subject to the 3 recommendations that have been discussed.
And then would you like to include in that the comments suggested by Commissioner?
Yes, and adding the recommendation, thank you, Ms. Garros, and adding a 4th recommendation for the edits that we've discussed tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I'd like to thank our staff for guiding us through this process for the last 2 years.
And our consultants?
And our consultants. Seems like we just
A lot of
started
work.
this at the maintenance facility and now here we are. So it's been a very enlightening experience.
Thank you.
All right. I would second that. I can't believe it was 2016.
Time flies when
Yeah,
you're
it
having fun.
really does. It really does. All right, well, we're ready to take a vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, and this goes to the city council
Next week?
November 20th, I think, at 5:30 PM. That brings us to the last item on our agenda, which is updates. Ms. Garros, anything from staff?
We have just a couple of quick updates. And if I can find my dash here. Just to let you know, from the last planning commission meeting, why don't I have it? The city council did approve the comprehensive plan amendment that was just reviewed for the larger 31-acre site. So that's under review. And in addition to that, doggone it, what did I do with it? Just going to let you know the future meeting dates.
Oh, yeah, with the,
Your next
holidays
meeting
coming.
will be on a Monday,
The Monday, the 26th. it looks
26th. Yep. And the items that are on that meeting at this point are basically the 2 items that, we went through tonight, with one with EFH being a variance and then the other being the public hearing that was continued.
Okay.
And with
Draft
that,
agenda.
that's it.
Commissioners, any updates from any of you?
Question?
Commissioner Roberts.
Question, in regards to the November 20th neighborhood meeting that's gonna happen here at City Hall, is there any issues with me being one of those neighbors, going to that, also being on the commission board?
I don't think so. It's usually, any of the commissioners can go. It's a
Okay.
public meeting.
Okay.
So anybody can go to that. Usually, when it gets into an issue of conflict, it's when there's some kind of, monetary type benefit of doing something. But just going and
Right.
listening and, even participating if you
I'd
want.
like to hear what everybody has to say.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
No, that's perfectly
Good
fine.
question.
Okay.
Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I move that we adjourn this meeting.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all, and see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.